in his accounting software that allowed him to move billions of dollars without ever triggering any flags internally in the company. And this is just really displaying the importance of open source DeFi. And of course, it's going to be spun to some degree about the dangers of crypto and the volatility and all this stuff. But really, more than anything, this is an example of why DeFi is so important and why you should not trust closed source centralized products that have no transparency and no accountability. And in this case, there may be some accountability in the fact that, Sam might go to prison, but that doesn't mean you're going to get your money back. And I think to the average user, real accountability means that it never gets this far, because it would be exposed as soon as that backdoor was implemented, or the moment that one of these contracts was published with a backdoor. But that doesn't happen in centralized closed source businesses, projects, platforms, whatever you want to call this. And more than anything, I think that this is great for DeFi in the long run, but obviously it's causing volatility in the short term. But great for open source and DeFi in the long run.
Yeah, absolutely agree. I think there's really two ways to see it. I think initially, it adds some fear to crypto. You shared about volatility, but I absolutely agree. I think long term, if you kind of look at the sub narrative, it's this idea that really the problem is that it's centralized, that we really need decentralized solutions. And so I absolutely agree. I think long term, it's just pointing to the big problem that crypto DeFi is trying to address. Yeah,
exactly. And now there's a ton of talk about regulation, but of course, regulation would not. We've seen the head of the SEC run the world's largest Ponzi scheme. It's regulation only really gatekeeps certain people from pulling these kinds of major frauds and thefts, but does not prevent the frauds and thefts. It just kind of consolidates it, makes it larger. Makes institutions that are, quote unquote, too big to fail. So when the fraud does happen, they get bailed out by the government. And, of course, we have a lot of people calling for regulation now, but that obviously is not the answer. And I think that we need to do our best to push this narrative that regulation is not the answer, and it's open source DeFi. And we're in a great position with our projects that regulation, no regulation, we're largely untouchable. And even in the case that regulation does, tighten, which I expect it to, we've always been very careful to not do some of the or fall for some of the stumbling blocks like guys like Do Kwon have done, and these other people, where they're taking, again, centralized control of the capital, making trading decisions on behalf of the user, and really skirting the line on securities laws. And we've always been very careful to stay away from that. So I feel like, or I know that our projects are, when it comes to regulation, the furthest from that gray area that you can be in crypto and DeFi. And then on top of that, we're hardened against any one attack vector that could take the project down, in the case that they just come after all of DeFi or all of crypto altogether. So, some examples of that is we don't have registered businesses or companies, corporations anywhere, especially not in the US, but we don't have them anywhere. We don't have any docs, centralized figures that people could go after. We don't have any kind of on-ramps that could be attacked. We're in the process of setting up a fiat on-ramp, but the fiat on-ramp is utilizing, on-chain contracts to handle it. And really, worst case scenario in our platform is they go after the fiat on-ramp. So we lose a fiat on-ramp and we're still, operating to full capacity. We can replace the fiat on-ramp. So we're hardened against these kinds of attack vectors, because I've known this is going to come since before 2012. I got involved in Bitcoin and creating Bitcoin on-ramps in 2012. The first thing I did was my first entry into the space as someone that's developing was building a Bitcoin on-ramp for a sports book in 2012. But even before that, I was very standoffish when it comes to putting personal information online. I never have had a personal Facebook. When I was in high school, Facebook was very popular. I just never created one. I never and still don't have any personal social medias out there because I just knew that this tech would be a double-edged sword. It would create great freedom, but also be a tool of tracking and a tool of oppression in a sense. And I've been cognizant of that from day one, and I've always used these tools in a way where we're getting the most out of them without putting ourselves out there, on the line for attacks in this way. So people that are running true DeFi projects and people that have stuck to the code or the integrity of open source DeFi are going to thrive over the next couple of years. And these projects that are trying to run like centralized businesses, and especially the people that come in here from traditional finance and try to run their crypto project as if it's a hedge fund or some traditional casino or something like that, they're going to be taken out by regulation. And in many cases, they're going to be taken out by their own founders.